Hello and welcome. This is No Doubt Racing. I'm Nicholas Kyle, and this is what's coming up on today's episode. On today's episode of No Doubt Racing, we're doing a deeper dive into 2.1 modified hot rod rotaries to see what makes these lightweight racers tick. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's straight into the 2.1 modified, and then we'll start with the rotaries. So first of all, as the name suggests, 2.1 is the maximum capacity of the engine. If you are running a 8 valve, and then if it's a 16 valve like a Toyota Beams engine or any 16 valve motor, it's up to 2000 cc's, which is a 2 litre, and then it should also be a stock engine. 8 valve motors can be modified with high compression pistons and conrods to just make it a bit more equal with the 16 valve motors. Maximum throttle body size is 45 millimeter, and then if you have a downdraft or a side draft, it's 48 millimeter on the 8 valve motors. And on the 16 valve 2 liters, throttle body size is maximum of 70 millimeters if you have a cold air intake fuel injection setup. Filters are available, any sizes, there's no regulations on that. And also you can run any fuels, avgas, race fuel, ethanol, methanol, whatever mixture you want to race is all up to you for the 8 valves. And then seems that the 16 valves are standard fuel only. That's again just to make the 8 valves a bit more competitive with the rest of the class of 16 valves. So power normally on these type of engines, on the 2.0 modified, is between 130 and 150 kilowatts on the wheels, which is quite relatively good for a natural aspirated motor. They obviously are not allowed to do any forced induction like a supercharger or a turbocharger, so it needs to stay naturally aspirated. And that's also just to keep the costs down and keep everything competitive between the races. also the weight is quite low for these space frame cars. It's a tubular chassis or a square chassis, whatever you want, and then the minimum weight is 800 kilograms, which is very low, obviously with the fiberglass body, and that is with the driver. So normally in wheel terms they tend to go around 850 to 950 kilograms per race car. And then the width of the car's wheelbase is not allowed to be wider than 2 meters and also not allowed to be longer than 5 meters. But a lot of the drivers actually prefer a shorter car. That's obviously for better weight distribution. Shorter it is, the less weight you have to distribute from front wheel to back wheel. And then also you can run a front wheel or a rear wheel drive car, and you can also convert a front wheel drive car to a rear wheel drive car. You just have to go back to the regulations and just make sure and do it for SA. We'll just go through the car and make sure that it is safe. Front wheel drive cars though, the engine has to stay on the original placement, where the rear wheel drive cars can move their engines quite deep inside the engine, just for weight distribution. And all the cars, they call it a tin top, so you can either have a steel body or a steel roof, or as you see a lot of guys run the Corsa bodies or the Fiesta bodies or Golf bodies, and that is all fiberglass, full fiberglass. But it's not allowed to, fiberglass bumpers and plastic bumpers are not allowed to go thicker than 4 millimeters. That's obviously so that you don't use your bumper as a crash bar or a bumper. There's also not pipes or any structure that's allowed to stick through the fiberglass, for instance bumpers and stuff. Right, so wheels, it can go anything from a 13 to a 15 inch, that's maximum, and then the width is a 205. And then obviously some drivers tend to groove their tires. If it's a wet track, you want a bit more grooves in your tire. If it's a rock hard track and it's quite dry, then obviously you want it a bit more slicker. Alright, so when it comes to engines, you can put any engine into any car as long as it goes by the regulations, but it could be a Nissan in a Toyota body or a Golf engine into a Corsa body. It's all open. As long as there was more than 500 units of that car produced, then you're allowed to use that engine. Decibels is also quite a thing, how loud the car is. They're not allowed to exceed 108 decibels. Which is kind of loud, but it's also not too loud. I know in the mines, those crushers and stuff, they normally run between 130 to 160 decibels, which can start to damage your ears over long periods. But the rotaries do shout quite a lot, so, and they are just loud from the get-go. So you can also run anything from a carburetor to a fuel injection. Any management system is open, so that's obviously to help with costs, and some engines just naturally run a lot better in fuel injection, and obviously the older style cars run the carburetors. And then the rotary motors also run fuel injection, but they can also run a downdraft carburetor, which I think is kind of nice for the old school look, and you get that filter out the bonnet. So tires also has to be normal road legal tires. There's not allowed to be retreads. That's obviously because of the safety concern. If a retread under high braking or high cornering comes loose, it might fling in someone's face, or it can just disrupt the racing. Suspension, rear suspension is open. It can be a solid axle or independent suspension, a 4-link setup. Most of the guys run a 4-link setup with a straight axle. I think it's just a bit cheaper and a lot more drivable, like settings wise. You can change quite a lot of geometry. You'll see some cars squat when they pull away, and other cars actually lift up, and that's all about the 4-link suspension and how you set it up. The cars that actually they say they push the tire down, when you see the guy gives gas and the car almost like picks up. It's to push the tire down and to get all the traction. And then quite an interesting fact on the brakes, a lot of the cars run, or almost all of them run, brake biases that you can set here close to the driver. You obviously get different types. You get a lever type and a turn type, and that is to control the brakes in the turn. A bunch of the cars, because those cars run clockwise, all the drivers also sit on the right hand side to keep the weight in the inside, and then they also set the brakes up to brake more on the inside than on the outside. That is now if you want to brake while you're in a corner, it pulls the car into the corner. And you can kind of be on the brake and on the gas at the same time to stabilize the car, and as I say, to keep it in the corner. But it also depends on track to track. Some tracks that have a long straight, the drivers would prefer to stop before the turn to get the speed down. Then they would set up the car to brake a bit more forward than on the side, just to keep the car stable, which is quite interesting because they literally take off all the brakes on the one side and just run the inside brakes. Quite an interesting fact. The 2.1 modified and hot rods, I just love the fact that they are purpose-built race cars with the tubular chassis, the lightweight fiberglass body. They are strictly made for oval track, and the parts are also interchangeable. All the front control arms are interchangeable, which makes racing a lot cheaper. They're also running rose joints, which makes the steering a lot direct, and obviously everything is hard mounted. I know the front wheel drive engines, they are not allowed to change the position of where their motor sits, but the rear wheel drive cars are allowed to hard mount them, and they are allowed to push them a bit more towards the rear, obviously for weight distribution. I'd love to see what these cars can do on a actual purpose-built racetrack, because they are so light. They obviously are not the most powerful. They don't really need it because it's so light, and oval track you're not going to get that much speed. But I think they'll do quite very well on a racetrack, although the fiberglass body might not hold up to all the forces of the wind. Speaking of forces, the rear wing also has a set diameter, and it also has to be behind the A-pillar, which is normally behind the driver. That's just for safety. And so yeah, and then the rotaries, normally the rotary engines are 13B, but you can probably run a 12B also, which is quite an older style rotary engine. Rotary engines are low, small and compact, but expensive though. They do sound extraordinary, especially if they're idle or if they're full flat. They just are wicked machines, but they are expensive. And they also, you can go from a fuel injection, a direct port, or a downdraft, which is quite open for the rotaries. They don't need to be set at 48mm, although I don't think they really go higher than 48mm downdraft. And also they're open on any fuels and any management systems. And I just love the rotaries bodies. They run these Mazda fiberglass bodies that looks nice, low slung, and just looks like it's racing while it's standing still. Let me know down in the comments below, what is your favorite category, what category I have to deep dive in, and what do you want to know. Any information you can just drop it down in the comments and I can chat to you guys. And I'll also left in the description, I left all the information of all the categories, so you can literally, it's the 24SA handbook where it goes more into every single detail of the cars. On the roll cages as well, there's certain points and certain ways. I'll put a photo of it here, and that is now around the occupant. Obviously with a tube chassis you're kind of open to do any style that you want, as long as that cage is around the driver for safety purposes. Alright, that's it for now. Please like and subscribe. It definitely helps the channel a lot, and it is for free, and it will just automatically help South Africa grow motorsport great together. Until next time, when in doubt, go flat out. Cheers.